Karen Knudsen is the Chief Executive Officer of the American Cancer Society and its advocacy affiliate, the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. For more than 100 years, the American Cancer Society has been improving the lives of people with cancer and their families through advocacy, research, and patient support. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Let's start with some good news. Your group, the American Cancer Society, has published a study revealing that the mortality rates for most cancers have decreased. Can you describe that study and your takeaways from it?
That's right. Every year we look at cancer incidence, mortality, and trends in a large research study that we conduct across the country. And what we've seen since 1991, which was the high watermark for cancer mortality rates in this country, is a 33% decline overall in the 200 different diseases that we call cancer.
And there are a couple that haven't had the progress of others. What was the issue there, and where do you see those type of cancers being treated going forward?
Yeah, so we actually look at this quite in depth for these 200 different diseases, and we know that a significant portion of that mortality decline came from prevention, screening, and early detection. So it's notable that we've made meaningful gains in many of the screenable cancers, as well as those for which we have early detection strategies. Now, there are other cancers for which we have significant concern because the trends are what we would call going the wrong way. Things like the early onset colorectal cancer, which we see on the rise. Things like advanced prostate cancer, 5% year over year shift in diagnosis to more advanced disease. Or for cancers for which we really have no early detection mechanism yet, like pancreatic cancer. So we take each one of these individually, set priorities, and then develop strategies using research, advocacy, and patient support to address them.
Karen, what have you found as far as across the country in underserved populations, rural, urban? What trends do you see?
Yeah. So unfortunately, what we see are sustainable trends that have occurred across the nation with regard to access to breakthroughs. So, we're in this incredible period of innovation in oncology. We just came back from 1 week at ASCO, the American Society of Clinical Oncology meeting, where we heard about many, many new strategies for treatment therapy and early detection. But it's quite clear that only a subset of the population is actually reaching those breakthroughs. So there are many things that we need to do together to address this. Some of these are legislative or policy related in nature, and others are associated with physically getting patients to access to more advanced care. Things like transportation, patient navigation, housing near cancer centers make major differences in actually getting someone access to these breakthroughs. So it's a whole conversation in itself, but what I would say is we are in the game at the American Cancer Society every day trying to close those gaps.
You mentioned legislation. What would you like to see Congress and or the administration do, whether that's authorizing legislation or appropriations legislation?
So much to do. So let's just talk about a couple quick ones. First has to be the breakthrough engine needs to keep going, and that is the funding for the NIH and the NCI. For FY24, we're seeking $51 billion for the NIH and 9.988, a very specific number, for the NCI. That we are at this pace of discovery that needs to sustain. But then how do we ensure that everyone gets access to these breakthroughs? Well, the most advanced form of cancer care comes in the form of clinical trials, and too few of those in the United States have access to clinical trials. So we're very highly supportive of the Diverse Trials Act. This makes it easier for all patients to participate in cancer clinical trials, removes barriers for underrepresented individuals, allows greater flexibility for things like telehealth, which we know can help close those gaps, and limits the tax implications that participants may face. It's notable that patients cite cost as a top reason for declining participation in clinical trials, making the individuals making less than $50,000 a year are 30% less likely to enroll.
When you talk to patients across the country, what do you hear that that maybe Washington politicians should also hear?
Yeah, I think what they hear is that they understand that there are these breakthroughs that are coming and that are here, but they don't know how to access them. So enhancing access to screening, to clinical trials, as we just talked about, but also to support for patients of how it is that they can navigate their journey. Even for someone in healthcare, navigating a cancer journey is incredibly difficult. Cancer patients are frequent flyers. They're back and forth to many different types of care teams at a cancer center. And even just making the appointments or understanding the sequence of events can actually be a barrier to surviving cancer and a barrier to a positive outcome. So, what we hear loud and clear is a desire for patient navigation to be a reimbursable component of the care team so that everyone has more of an opportunity to detect and survive cancer.
President Biden's cancer moonshot initiative, where do you think it is? Obviously, COVID set it back a little bit on research, but where do you think it is, and do you think it can be successful? Got some bold goals over the next 20 plus years.
It has bold goals, but I am highly optimistic that we will get there. And we at the American Cancer Society are leaning in hard to participate in every element of that framework. Now, what I love about this iteration of the Moonshot Reignited is the emphasis on prevention, screening, and early detection. We will not be able to continue to reduce the mortality rate for cancer unless we intervene early. Early detection for cancers are associated with an improved outcome for almost every cancer type, and certainly with reduced cost of care for everyone involved. So, this emphasis on escalating access to early detection and prevention, I think, will be key for the moonshot to succeed.
When you're talking about early detection, and obviously that is the key. Obviously, there were some routine appointments that people skipped during the pandemic. What does the data show? Are people going back to the doctor and making sure that if anything needs to be detected, it is early?
Yeah, unfortunately, we have not seen the recovery that we need to see. I should say that even prior to COVID, screening rates for the screenable cancers in the US were not where they needed to be, and COVID exacerbated the problem. If we look at 2020 alone, we see that more than 9 million Americans missed their screening. And we have deep concern that those Americans are sitting now with a cancer that's not yet been detected and will present with more aggressive disease, again, more difficult to treat. So there are things that we really can and need to do. And when we look at screenable cancers like prostate cancer, where we're seeing this increase in advanced disease stage diagnosis, we look at potential solutions that can come through advocacy and through legislative activity, like the PSA Screening for Him Act. This act removes out of pocket costs, which are real barriers for screening, for men at high risk of prostate cancer. This is important because almost 1/3 of cancers diagnosed for men in this country this year will be prostate cancer, and it is the second leading cause of cancer death for men in the United States. So it's the case that reintroduction of this bill into Congress has been, I think, a win, and it will soon, as we believe, be reintroduced into the Senate. And so these types of activities truly can save millions of lives.
Where are we as far as certainly the pandemic raised some major policy concerns, and Congress responded with a lot of money and also passing the CHIPS bill because we have become so reliant on other countries on treatments and drugs. What did the pandemic mean for cancer patients, and is that getting better?
Yeah, well, I have a different lens on this because at the time I was actually leading oncology for a large health system, 18 hospitals across 2 states. So I felt it firsthand. Cancer care did not stop during the pandemic. Patients still were diagnosed with cancer and needed to be treated and needed to be on clinical trials. So thankfully, all of that continued. But what didn't happen was that front end, the screening. And so those that were already diagnosed with cancer largely were able to get treatment, but those who should have gone into screening, these healthy asymptomatic individuals were concerned, are still sitting with potential cancer that needs to be addressed. So we've not seen that bounce back in screening that we need. Now, I would say there was a silver lining in the pandemic for cancer, which was the incorporation of telehealth into the cancer care continuum. For someone who's had their scan and needs to talk to their oncologist, but doesn't need to actually have a physical exam, telehealth became a wonderful opportunity to extend that communication between the cancer patient, their family, and the provider. That continues today. I do think that there are ways that we can continue to escalate that and bring cancer care into closer to home where possible, so that we can help close some additional disparities that exist due to geography and proximity to cancer centers. But there are opportunities for that to be eased through considering ways to facilitate that state to state, so that it's easier for patients and providers to communicate with each other on something as important as cancer.
Last question, it's a broad one, but what are you looking at for technology next 5, 10 years? Where are we going to be in the next decade?
As I said, we're in this incredible, unprecedented period of innovation for oncology. We've had surgical radiation and medical oncology, so, classic chemotherapy, now be augmented with a whole new brand of therapy, immunotherapy. We will see additional innovation there and immunotherapy functional on multiple cancer types. But I also know that we'll see innovation in different parts of the cancer continuum. Innovation in early detection, even early detection at home, including but not limited to blood draws to detect cancer cells that are circulating in the serum, or cancer in your blood, or cancer DNA, that can give someone the earliest possible indication that they may have a clinically meaningful cancer. So we're watching that and looking at that. But we will also see innovation in imaging, including the incorporation of artificial intelligence or generative AI to help rapidly assess images for cancer development or cancer progression. So I think we will see innovation across that cancer continuum, everything from prevention to early detection, to understanding how to adequately put patients into different types of personalized medicine therapy strategies, as well as enhancement of quality of life. All across the cancer continuum, we are seeing innovation. That's why it's so important for us to keep cancer research going.
Absolutely. Karen Knudsen, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me.